Today we're going to talk about YouTube, specifically YouTube creators within the world of Roblox and Pokemon. So I have invited Rob. He has many years of experience within the YouTube space. And yeah, we're going to talk about the long form content, why it's important, why it's the future, and a lot more. So let's get started. I was actually, checking out the site, the talent management you work for. So many interesting YouTubers, like Roblox, Pokemon, like you mentioned in our first call. And I'm like, I was in this world a few years ago, or maybe 5, 6 years ago. We did mobile games. So our idea was also to connect with creators, maybe gamers. And back then I was scrolling so much on YouTube to find creators, reach out to them and do that whole work. But it was funny to see all of your creators because they feel like they are so unique and really niched. But yeah, I know you have many years of experience from YouTubers, creators. Yeah, tell me a little bit more just around the YouTube space right now, and also a little bit your background.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I can start with my background, and then we can flip over to some questions around YouTube that I'd be happy to dive into. So I joined the industry about 3.5 years ago. I would have joined a company called Juniper Creates, and at the time I was working for big tech software, and I was moving around jobs a little bit, and I was really interested in the creator space. I saw that the overall market size was just doubling every single year. And it got me really excited to learn a little bit more about what exactly creators are and the different types of businesses that they run. So when I originally had started in this space, I was working for a company called Juniper Creates, and we were developing custom e-commerce merchandise lines for content creators, large IPs like video games or shows, or even just a summer camp who wanted to create plush toys or t-shirts for their users and their audiences. So when I was working at Juniper Creates, a majority of our customers were YouTubers. And that's how I learned the most about YouTube. The reason why we found that YouTube worked the best specifically in that world was because on YouTube, unlike a lot of other platforms, you have a voice and you develop that audience that is a little bit more sticky than maybe on TikTok or Instagram, where you might like a photo or watch a 30-second clip, but then you go on to the next thing. With YouTube, you have 10, 20, sometimes even hour-and-a-half videos that allow your audience to really dive into who you are and the personality and value that you drive for them as a consumer of your videos. I was doing sales and partnerships there for about 2.5 years. So I was lucky enough to work with so many creators in all different verticals, not just the gaming verticals, not just the video essay verticals, pretty much everyone. And I got to learn a lot about YouTube and the creators that are using it to make a living on that platform. I ended up transitioning to a company called LFI Talent Agency, which is where I'm at right now. And the big reason for my transition was I noticed with merchandise, a lot of creators are able to do it. That doesn't mean a lot of creators will be successful at it. You need to really enjoy it, and you need to realize that it's one of your many business units as a creator. It drives revenue, but you still need to focus on it. It's not just passive. So what I realized was many creators can't actually generate revenue via merch, and I wanted to be more in the weeds with creators when it comes to their overarching business plans and how they generate money and revenue for themselves and for everyone who works for them. So I ended up moving over to LFI Talent Agency, where I was able to actually get that entire spectrum of business opportunities and be able to help them manage their finances, their revenue, and develop new strategies for them to become bigger, better, and ultimately make more money within their space.
You touched on something interesting, and I want to hear a lot more about Roblox because I saw you have a lot of people on there. For someone that is like, don't even know what Roblox is, obviously it's the game or it's a platform where you can, play a lot of games, but can you just give us a little bit, a mini tour of that world and specifically how that works for creators and if brands want to jump into Roblox universe, like how?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. And I think Roblox caught a lot of people off guard, especially adults. I talk to a lot of different businesses, even colleagues that I have in real life from my past life in the tech and business world, and they always ask, I don't really understand Roblox. I don't get it. What exactly is it? I see all of my nieces and nephews and all of our kids are playing it, but what exactly is it? And that's a tough question because they started off as something so straightforward and has evolved into something so much bigger than that. And obviously, of course, Roblox is now a public company, so it's quite interesting. You can buy them on the stock market if you really are invested in their future and want to make some money off of their success. But with Roblox specifically, they've built a platform, unlike many other games, that allow developers to come in and essentially build whatever worlds they want. So there's some massive worlds out there, whether it be as tower defense games or capturing animals like Pokemon or FPS shooters like Call of Duty. They've given the tools to developers to essentially make any world that they want to attract customers, or in their case, users. So specifically, Roblox is a platform and a game at the same time. It's a game because you go on and you play it, but without developers and without teams building these worlds, essentially Roblox would be empty. There wouldn't be worlds for users to go to. There wouldn't be interactions to be made with other users. So with these developers, essentially they've created thousands and thousands and thousands of worlds, obviously some more popular than others. And what we're starting to see in the world right now, which is quite interesting, is a lot of brands are starting to pick up on this. They're starting to realize that if they actually sponsor these worlds or sponsor these developers and actually put advertisements within the games, they're starting to train younger generations to be able to notice these things. So I don't know which examples I can give, but we have worked with many companies in the past that have been able to sponsor Roblox worlds so that when the user, maybe a 12-year-old child, goes into the game, now they see a pizza ad or an Apple ad or a Microsoft ad, and they start to be sort of trained a little bit earlier on within these worlds. And the inevitable thing is going to happen. And I think a lot of people think, hey, why are we serving ads to these kids? Why are they getting served all of these very targeted things within a game that they're playing? But the reality is it's a free game. And as a result, much like the internet, it will eventually be taken over by advertisers. So I think at first Roblox realized, hey, we're going to build a core game and then we're going to evolve it into something that people integrate into their daily lives. And the interesting thing is YouTube caught on to that. We have a lot of amazing creators who now do skits in Roblox. They've developed their own games in Roblox. They partnered with large brands in Roblox. They play different games every single day, or they comment on the gameplay. It's developed this entire huge side on YouTube that I think so many people are overlooking. Even just yesterday, I was on the phone with a very large agency in the space. I'm not going to mention who, but they came to me and they said, hey, Rob, I remember you talked to me at this conference about Roblox and how it was going to blow up. I didn't believe you at the time, but now I realize you're right. And we're seeing creators like Flamingo or LankyBox bring in millions and millions and millions of audience members to watch them play this game. So clearly there's a massive demand, and clearly Roblox did something extremely right to develop the audience that they currently have.
Yeah, Roblox is super interesting. I think it's very similar to YouTube. I would say it's kind of like YouTube, but for gaming, because in the end it's creator, but in Roblox it's developers, and it's just scalable. It's same with YouTube, all the content is just scalable, like everybody can just create it and people watch it. And it's the same like Roblox. There's always games that are maybe not trending, but there's always a few that is like popping up and becoming really, really popular. So I like that kind of if you can call it a platform. That's super cool. But is it classic billboard ads like in the world, or if you're a brand, like if you're a fashion brand, like does it make sense to go into that world? Or tell me a little bit more, like how would it look like if you want to set up a collaboration with in a game or with a specific
Yeah, absolutely. It could really be across the board. I haven't specifically worked with sponsorships in Roblox, so my knowledge is obviously limited on the topic. But within those worlds, I think the sponsorships could really be anything. I've seen a lot of, so just to give you an idea, I've seen a lot of Lego sponsorships. I've seen a lot of Mattel and Hasbro sponsorships. So we're starting to see a lot of these companies that already advertise to the younger generation start to work with developers to enter that world as well. So I really think that it's just another stream, and we're starting to see other games sort of follow suit as what Roblox did. Even Fortnite, for example, released their open studio developing platform just last year as sort of a competitor to Roblox as open studio developer. So, so we're starting to see a lot of games actually pick up on this concept as well, because essentially, I always like to think of it like, hey, if you give a man a fish, he eats for a day. If you teach a man a fish, he eats for life. And they're giving people the ability to fish. They're giving people the ability to create these games and build revenue off of games on an existing platform. So they don't need to start from bare bones. And it's really interesting the sort of shift in the way that people look and interact with these games as a result. And I think ads and just advertisers in general are the next logical step. How successful they are, I don't have the data, unfortunately, to support that, but I see that as being the future of gaming and the future of advertisement as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, especially if you have a bigger company, I think it makes sense to at least put some budget, test it, see what happens, just to be early on, and also to learn a lot. In the same way many brands jumped on TikTok a few years ago, because they just needed to be there, learn and understand the whole platform. But yeah, you said something about like, TikTok, Reels, it's short format. You see 3 seconds, you forget who was that, and then you just move on. Compared to like YouTube, long format, higher quality usually, and you really get, stuck in it. But why do you think, I mean, I know you love YouTube and that's kind of what you would recommend, but you can still see a lot of success with like TikTok and going viral and all that. But tell me a little bit more why you think YouTube long format is the winner and the way to go for brands.
And I don't discredit TikTok, because I think TikTok in today's current landscape is still by far number one when it comes to discovery. If you're a new musician, if you're a new content creator, if you're a new comedian, TikTok is by far the number one way to get discovered. Absolutely. There's literally no questions about that. YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, they can't even compete. It's TikTok all the way. The problem is obviously holding that audience. I think with our attention spans nowadays and the way that social media has started driving our thought process and our psychology, what we're starting to realize is the attention span just isn't there. So you see a comedian, you love him, you might give him a follow, but then you swipe another 300 different TikTokers and maybe you love another 10% of them and you like them as well. So one just doesn't stand out. Whereas I think with YouTube and where a lot of TikTokers like to evolve to is more of that long form content. I know in the last 5 or 6 years, 7 to 12 minute content has reigned king. But as of recently, YouTube has shifted their algorithm a little bit to prioritize the longer form content. And it's not just because they realize, hey, we're going to get more ad spots on this longer form content, so let's keep them on the platform for as long as possible, because as a tech company, we want to make sure that our users are staying on the platform for as long as possible, not just interacting with it. But what I've actually started realizing is YouTube is pretty much replacing traditional media. I always have conversations with my colleagues and friends and family in real life, and they always are so shocked to hear that I'm in this world, because when I say, hey, I work with YouTubers, to a lot of them, they just think like, oh, hey, those guys that get on camera all day and create content. But what I'm starting to see is even 60, 70, 80-year-olds are watching hours and hours of YouTube instead of traditional media like TV and radio nowadays. So we're starting to see this shift happen. And with YouTube, where I see a big difference compared to something like TikTok, where you get that instantaneous rush of feedback, YouTube's actually building longer form gratification because you're providing value to the people that you're serving. So with TikTok, yes, you might hit them with a 60-second or 180-second piece of information until they move on to the next thing. But with YouTube, you might go into a video essay about World War II. You might teach them about why their favorite Pokemon exists in Pokemon games. You might talk to them about the different mechanics behind the scenes in a Final Fantasy game. Or you might talk to them about the best things to do in Thailand on a budget. And what you're actually doing is you're starting to develop this value in the form of long-form content that people are starting to resonate with more and more and more and more. And instead of turning on the TV in the corner of your room, you're opening up your laptop or your phone and you're watching hours and hours of YouTube because it's replacing that existing media. And for years, people sat and watched commercials and then went and bought products. And very much the same, we are seeing this within YouTube now as well, except for the one big difference. On TV, traditionally, you would watch your favorite show and then it would cut to commercial where an actor you've never seen in your life is promoting this product. And you say, hey, you know what? That makes a lot of sense for me. I have a new baby. Maybe I need Pampers. But now on this YouTube side, instead of cutting to a commercial with an actor you've never seen in your life, that same individual who's providing you value each and every single week is now also promoting their favorite product, whether it be a VPN or a new game or maybe a food delivery service. So we're getting a stickier audience when it comes to conversions as a result, because no longer is it, hey, watch it on TV, go buy it. It's now, hey, watch your favorite YouTuber and convert right on the spot. And as a result, a lot of advertisers are actually seeing not only better conversion, but way better ways of tracking that conversion as well. Because instead of just watching it on TV and then transitioning over to a store where they have no way of tracking you in between, there's direct ways to track right within the actual videos themselves. So we're starting to see a very big shift. And I think YouTube is moving a lot more towards longer form content as well, where those 40, 45, 50-minute videos all of a sudden are something we're willing to sit down and watch.
I think so too. I mean, if you just think about it, just having long format is like, it's just easier to build trust. You know, you cannot build trust in 10 seconds, like good luck. But if you have like a long format, you're talking with someone or you listen to someone for 30 minutes, it's the same in sales. Like the more touch points and the more talk I have with someone I want to sell a product on, the more trust is built. Obviously, if you bring value. So if you bring value, long format, the trust is there, easier to convert, and then and then everything works. And I think now, Instagram tried this IGTV a while ago. It didn't really work out for them, but I think they kind of saw that this long format space is interesting. Like maybe we should go into that. They failed. TikTok now, I think they are raising, right?
Yeah,
it can be longer now. And I think they also see like that's maybe why they also went to TikTok Live. All that is kind of trying, I think, to copy YouTube because YouTube are the only one with that. They kind of
absolutely, and even some
on both sides too. Like creators want to be on YouTube, they make more money there. Just look at Mr. Beast, like making crazy money that he doesn't even want to put this content on X just because of it's too.
It's crazy on YouTube. Yeah, and I think a lot of people think like, hey, you need to be massive to make big money on YouTube, but you don't. AdSense is by far, when it comes to long form content, AdSense still pays the best on YouTube. And I think YouTube positioned themselves in a really interesting corner because all of their competitors disappeared. Vimeo disappeared. A lot of these long form platforms disappeared, and as a result, we're sitting left with YouTube. And now when you upload long form content, you're not doing it on Facebook, you're not doing it on X, you're doing it on YouTube. So they really have locked everyone out of that category, and they're really dominating it as a space.
Can you tell me a little bit more about, maybe you will touch on the Pokemon space? That would be interesting to hear why you guys have so many Pokemon creators. But I think you also mentioned something in our first call about the universe, like a bubble of something. You jump in, yeah, tell me a bit more about that, just the background. I think, yeah, that was super interesting. When it was, I guess it was connected to the long format thing. When you are, for example, having a YouTube only about Pokemon, why they are winning is because they are able to build some kind of universe where any audience are jumping in and like living in that universe. But tell me a little bit more about that. Why?
So in our last conversation, thank you for reminding. In our last conversation, I talked about two big things that make YouTubers successful. At least from what I've seen in my past days as a merch operator for these YouTube channels, the ones who were able to sell the most product and generate the most revenue on their services were ones who either provided value or created their own universes. And what I mean by that is, I'll give you an example of one of my creators, SML, which is Super Mario Logan. I had brought him up last time. Amazing creator, absolutely fantastic individual. I love his entire team. And he essentially created a world where he uses puppets that he's created to develop content. And I know everyone's saying puppets, they're so outdated. Why? How could puppets be interesting to watch? But he garnishes millions of views on every single one of his videos because you've now been invested in these characters. They are either like you or they share similarities to you. And as a result, you're invested in them. The second piece is value. I find that in today's day and age, creators need to provide value in turn for them to get value back to them. So I don't mean AdSense, because there's some creators who do phenomenal with AdSense without actually providing value. I'll give an example. Skibidi Toilet. I'm not sure if you've heard of Skibidi Toilet, but it's one of the biggest trends on YouTube right now. This guy's videos make millions of views overnight, and it has zero value whatsoever. He uses Blender, a program that creates like designs, and he makes these random toilet designs with a head inside of them. And he makes millions and millions off AdSense, which blows my mind. But if he were to ever sell a brand like, for example, NordVPN or Ridge Wallet, people would look at him and say, why am I going to buy from this? It's a random video that maybe I laugh at, maybe I'm scared of, that there's no value here. Whereas someone like SML, who's creating this universe, he's providing value in the form of comedy. He's providing value in the form of custom skits. It's almost like going to watch a puppet show, but you're doing so from your living room instead of having to go pay hundreds of dollars to go sit down in a theater somewhere to watch it. So these universes I see have been winning as of recently. Even someone like LankyBox is an amazing example. LankyBox, we realized really early on in their world, which LankyBox is a Roblox creator, but LankyBox, they used to advertise themselves. So Justin and Adam are the two creators that make LankyBox up. And when we used to do t-shirts and hoodies with them, they used to put their own faces on it. And what do you know? It didn't really do that well. People didn't actually want Justin and Adam's face on their t-shirt. They wanted something else. And what we realized really quickly was, what about if we developed them characters? What if we developed them Boxy and Foxy and Sticky and Canny and Milky and Juggy and Rocky? And you're probably thinking these are all just items that you took around the house and you added a Y at the end of their names. But that simple transition where we developed characters that were all so unique actually ended up being so successful for them as creators. So just a little bit of a paradigm shift within their content now allowed them to create these characters, which they can not only merchandise off of, but gain the trust of their audiences. So for example, Foxy is very playful and likes to meet new people, and he's very outgoing. But Boxy, he's very shy and he's always sleepy and he's hungry. And kids sit down and say, hey, I'm Boxy or I'm Foxy. And I like that character because it reminds me of myself. So we start to build these relationships that are these intrinsic feelings of value that are underlying, even though it's the content that we're creating because we've made these characters, it's actually touching people's sort of minds and brains in different ways than we didn't actually expect. So these universes are quite fantastic for YouTubers to transition into, because again, it's building that trust and then value for for everyone. Now, I
No,
like
you're
to
good.
touch on the Pokemon side as well, but before I jump into that, I think you have a question.
It reminds me of just a Disney World. Just looking at the kids like loving Frost and everything. There's so crazy connection and trust, and I mean, you can do that with any type of audience. And you just mentioned a great example. Something I wanted to just go into. Maybe you want to go into Pokemon before, but just so I don't forget. Many brands there are, sourcing, looking for so many YouTube creators out there. Like, who should they work with? And you mentioned the people with the universe audience or whatever you call it. Those are the best one and successful. How can you, if you're outside that universe, you don't follow that person, you don't know all the stickiness and everything. How can you know that that one really has a true audience or have built this universe and that will help you? Yeah, and that's the one you should go for. Like,
It,
how is that scalable if anyone
it's
would?
tough. It
Yeah,
really is tough, and I think we struggled at Juniper quite a long time trying to actually figure out who's going to be successful versus who's not going to be successful. Because there are a lot of creators who build those universes, but sometimes they don't do them the right way, and as a result, they don't build the audiences behind them. So I would love to answer that question the best way possible, but in many cases, it still is a gamble. And I teach an audience analytics class at a university in Toronto, and with a lot of my students, I always talk to them about, from a brand's perspective, how do you know your marketing dollars are going to good use? And I always like to think of it a little bit like gambling. When you gamble, you take a bunch of money, let's say roulette, for example, you take a bunch of money, you put it on 7, you put it on 1, you put it on 3. And if one of those numbers hit, you got an ROI. You immediately got a return for what you were doing. And in many cases, I think marketing within the creator world is still a little bit like educated gambling. You obviously have a lot more to work off of. You have demographics, you have audience data, you have average viewership of videos that we're able to provide for these brands. But at the end of the day, they're still putting a bunch of money on red or black or 7 or 9 and seeing if it hits. So I don't think there really is a way that we could fully determine just yet. I know, for example, when I was working at Juniper, which is the merch company, one of the things that we were able to do was actually look up SEO search data. And what we were finding was some creators were searched way more often than other creators. And it wasn't just because they were better or got more viewership. It's because the audience was actually invested in their character or their world or who they were as a human being outside of their actual videos. So it's one thing to watch a video on YouTube and say, hey, I really like this creator, subscribe. It's another thing to now go on Google and search them up. Because if you go and search them up and you learn a little bit more about them, or you learn about their background, or you learn about if they sell products, if they have their own merch line, that's where you start to get a little bit more invested in them. So we realize that correlation between search data or search analytics or AdWords and the actual creator's name is a little bit of a correlation that we were relying on. But again, it still is very random.
but I love those tips are great for all brands out there just to know about and try it all. I've talked also a lot about, but this case was more like if you evaluate someone on Instagram, but if they're active on multiple social channels, that's usually positive. And sometimes if they're huge on YouTube, but a little bit smaller on Instagram, those people that are following them on Instagram, those are the true, like loyal followers. And it could also be the opposite, like Instagram's super big, but then you have TikTok, they are smaller on TikTok. But the people that are really following on there, those are the one that really cares about them. So that is that, yeah, definitely. But Google Trends / SEO and SEMrush, I guess.
Exactly.
Those
SEMrush is exactly what we use. It's interesting too because you touched on a good point. These audiences outside of the platform. So even when looking at some of the creators that I manage within the Pokemon world, they have Discords that have hundreds of thousands of people within their Discord. And it's not just, hey, I'm going to watch your YouTube video once a month. It's now, I interact with your community that you built around your content. And it's become such a revolutionary concept, I think, for people not in that world, because it's sort of hard to understand. And I know we always see these news articles about people are becoming lonelier and people are becoming more distant from each other and more people are spending more time online. But it's interesting because I think they're rallying around these communities online, and even just being able to interact with some of these Pokemon communities that some of my creators have built. It's revolutionary that people are so friendly. Everyone's there to help each other, and everyone it has a common interest, the creator that they watch. So it's really interesting. And using those outside audiences like the Discords, the Patreons, the Twitter channels, those are very good ways for brands to actually recognize if the creator has a sticky audience or not. Because the sticky audience is going to go join the Discord group, whereas the non-sticky audience won't.
When it comes to these type of niches that you guys work with, does it make sense for any, I guess, bigger, normal, if you can call it like a Macy's or, Zara, H&M, like how can any type of brands work with these type of niches? Because I know on Instagram, it's very, very popular to work with any type of niches because they have a, better community, more loyal audience, etc. But when it comes to like Roblox, everything you just mentioned, like, does it make sense for any fashion brand, like fast fashion brand or beauty brand, to even jump into these type of communities? And do you have an example if anyone?
Yeah, so fast fashion, probably not as much. I wouldn't suggest that fast fashion necessarily jump into the longer form content. I think that it probably wouldn't get the best reception compared to something like TikTok live shopping. They're just completely different worlds. Yeah. And obviously you can even think about it like fast fashion, fast TikTok. It's sort of similar. I think with YouTube, a lot of these brands are starting to build more lifelong relationships and lifelong partnerships with the audiences that they're serving. So a good example would be like Manscaped. Manscaped, I wouldn't consider fast fashion. I think Manscaped has started to really compete with some of the larger brands like Sony and Philips and all of these brands that have been in the shaving space for so long. Because they're starting to realize how to market to their audiences a lot better. And they're starting to catch people early on in their careers as well. So what I mean by this is I started shaving when I was, I don't know, maybe 13 or 14 years old. And how did I pick my shaver out? I either asked my dad because I said, hey, Dad, what do you use? Or I go to Walmart and I find what the best shaver on the shelf is. And I say, hey, you know what? That one looks really good. Let's buy that. But I'll give you an example with these Pokemon creators, specifically the ones serving the younger audiences, the 13, the 14, the 15, the 16-year-olds. They're going to start shaving for their first time in the next couple of years. And by developing these audiences really early on and actually pushing that concept to them, we start to develop customers a lot earlier on in the life cycle. And Manscaped is really smart because with a normal shaving company, it's pretty boring. It's like, I don't know if you've seen the Gillette commercials on TV, but it's like, you can't really innovate with those. Whereas with Manscaped, they make you laugh, they make you cry, they evoke emotions, and commercials are actually just really funny in general. And now, all of a sudden, when a teen says, I need to start shaving, what am I going to use? Well, all of a sudden, Manscaped is top of mind. So we're able to start developing these audiences at an earlier age. When it comes to clothing, I think clothing is definitely a little bit more difficult. I don't have much experience with fashion specifically with my creators because I advertise mainly with games and gaming creators. But I do know that a lot of fashion review creators have been extremely successful. But again, you're going on YouTube to watch fashion review. It only makes sense to advertise that on those platforms. Whereas with gaming, Pokemon, Roblox, probably a little bit less. However, I do know that brands like Gucci, Prada, and all of those are starting to work with Roblox to get their advertisements within game because it's less about who can afford it and more about brand recognition. Obviously, you're not going to just load up a hyperlink on Roblox and buy a $10,000 handbag. But when you grow up, continuously sticks with you. And it's more about that brand recognition than anything.
When it comes to, because you work so much with the brands, and you know all the deals out there, how much it costs to actually invest in a YouTuber or invest in a partnership, and also in my experience is that obviously it's a better channel, more conversion and everything, but then it's also more expensive to even be able to invest in the first collaboration. Like if you just want to start with a creator YouTuber, just test the channel and do a brand deal, how can you be smart as a brand to not invest too much where it's super high risk? Because Instagram, TikTok, it's so much more scalable, it's cheaper. Like you can find just a small profile, gift them, or even do a small micro payment. But on YouTube, if you want to test it and not have a huge budget and want to just test the channel, what would you say is the best way?
Yeah, I would really think about the niche. So first and foremost, I think about, what are you advertising? Is it a game? Is it a service? Is it a product? Is it clothing? Is it electronics? Where are you actually focusing in on? If it's something like, let's say, electronics, you could then look at some of the top tech reviewers on YouTube. Obviously, you're not going to have the money to have like a Marquez Brownlee advertise your next electronic device, but there are a lot of people that aren't the same size as him. So I'll give you an example. When we are advertising our Pokemon creators, which we actually just did a count yesterday, we have 19 Pokemon creators, which is crazy. But when we're advertising with our Pokemon creators, we traditionally bring them to the advertiser in 3 big buckets. We have our small bucket, we have our medium bucket, we have our large bucket. With our large bucket, those creators are commanding anywhere from $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 a video. So as a small brand, probably not going to want to touch that bucket, especially if you want to get the best for your budget. The mediums, they're anywhere from $5,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000. Little bit better, but still, you know what? Maybe we're not necessarily there yet. Whereas the small creators, they're only asking for $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 for one of their videos. And what we're starting to realize is a lot of these creators actually have a lot of audiences that cross over. Specifically within our Pokemon niches, what we're finding is a lot of our Pokemon creators are actually collaborating on videos together. So someone like PM7, who's one of the biggest Pokemon creators, collaborates with someone like Gentle Dude, who just started on YouTube this year. So we're getting a lot of audience crossover. People who loved PM7 now want to watch Gentle Dude. PM7 commands a way larger budget than Gentle Dude does, but their audiences do intersect. So even though you may not necessarily want to spend thousands and thousands of dollars testing on PM7, there's still a way to test for a lot cheaper. I think what YouTube needs to do a little bit better, which isn't very visible to brands right now, is the ecosystems they've developed with their users. And I know that there's this massive room, or at least I like to envision there's this massive room at the Google offices or the YouTube offices and Google offices where they see all of these awesome panels of audience analytics and where people are watching videos and how many of them are crossover audiences and stuff like that. It just doesn't exist for brands right now. So I think working with agencies, working with people like myself who actually understand where these crossovers exist and how to get the best bang for your buck from a marketing perspective is just the way that they have to work right now. And I know a lot of marketing agencies or brands might think that we're just added bureaucracy, but we know way more about the ecosystem than many do because we're involved with creators who work within that ecosystem. And obviously, from an agency perspective as well, we want to make sure that brands are continuously renewing with our creators. We don't want to see a brand come in, spend $1,000 or $2,000 on a small creator, and then never come back to any of our larger creators. So it's up to us to make sure that when we're working with these brands, we're pointing them in the best direction possible. Because not only is it for the best benefit for us, because the brand's going to keep coming back, but it's also the best benefit for the brand as well, because they're going to be getting the best ROI and they're going to be getting the best audiences that they need to be targeting in the first place.
I love that. We talk a lot about audience overlap or audience crossover too. And I think if you would go for any random general lifestyle profile, it's hard to know the audience overlap. But I think, like you said, if you go to these type of niches Pokemon, there's only maybe 50, 100 creators worldwide that are quite big. If you go with the small ones, it kind of pretty high chance that they have a few similar or same followers as the big ones. And then if you go with the smaller ones, that's a perfect way to test it out. And if you get good traction there, you kind of assume that the bigger ones will be less risk of investment, and then you go for that one, and hopefully you get even better results. So I love that. I love that. But as a kind of a final questions, any like YouTube trends, like anything that you see future that will be interesting or for any brand to
Yeah, I think there's a few. We're starting to see a lot of, specifically within the gaming space, we're starting to see a lot of creators actually not game at all, but create gaming history. So a very good example would be Summoning Salt. He's a creator you may have never heard of, but if you're in the gaming space, he's on everyone's mind. Every single one of my creators knows about him and watches his videos, which is crazy to hear that every single one of my creators knows about another creator, all mutually. But what Summoning Salt has done, and he's actually sort of been the first sort of innovator in the space to do so, is he's now doing history on games. So his big thing is speedrunning history. He takes an hour-long video and talks about a specific game and all of the different people that have sped run that game to get the world record. All the different glitches that they used, all the different shortcuts they took, where there were different inflection points to get better times on the games and stuff like that. And you may never have even played the game in your life, and you sit down and watch, and you're just mesmerized by all of the different things that people do and rally around as a community to essentially break this game and get the best time possible. And I always used to be one of those people who I always used to be like, I don't understand why you would watch someone else play a game. I don't really get it. I would just play the game myself. Why would I watch someone else? And then you start to realize, because I'm not good, because there's people out there who dedicate their entire lives to get a second better on a Super Mario game, or to get a 1 in 10,000 jump on a racing game. And you start to realize that there's a lot deeper roots around this. So someone like Summoning Salt does a really, really, really good job at providing feedback around these games, because he's building a history around them. So it doesn't feel like you're watching someone playing a game. It feels like you're watching a documentary. And what I advise for a lot of brands to do is start to look out for these creators who are building narratives and storylines around specific topics, specifically in something like a variety gaming audience, where you're not just focusing on a single thing like Pokemon, but you're focusing on the bigger picture, and you're building sort of your own niche around that. The second thing that I would highly advise brands to start looking out for a lot more is longer form content. So I know I mentioned this in our last call, but someone like Sam Sulek, who's a bodybuilder on YouTube, has absolutely taken the world by storm. And it's really interesting because it's just a really big, nice man working out. He talks about his breakfast. He talks about what he does in his spare time. He shows what he does at the gym. And it's very raw and unedited. And I think YouTube is starting to go back towards that very raw and unedited side of the world, because people are so invested in the person. I understand someone like Mr. Beast has some of the best editors in the world, and he's able to create such amazing transitions and amazing storyboards. But we're actually starting to see creators not do any of that and still garner quite a bit of success and quite a bit of eyeballs on their channel. And I watched many of Sam Sulek's 1 hour videos where he sits there and works out, and you could literally drag and drop any single person in the world that is nice enough to sit down and let you in on their life. But it just so happens that people are now interested in that again. So I challenge brands to start looking at those creators that are more about their life and unedited and raw footage, because it's starting to blow up. And I think a lot more people are starting to get very, very invested in those types of channels as well.
Yeah, I think so too. I think also that the reason why TikTok is working also very well is because it's not too edited. Like, it's hard to edit a TikTok video. It needs to be just very natural. But Rob, this was super fun. I feel like I've learned a lot about YouTube, especially about these different niches. Yeah, really, thanks for sharing all this
No worries. Again, it
insight.
was amazing having this conversation, and yeah, super happy to be invited on this.